Okay. All right. We're on. Thank you. Is it taping? It's a rowdy crowd. Rowdy crowd.
I gotta look at Shlomo the whole time.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, you don't get my best angle. You don't get my best angle, but I gotta be.
Masculine ass.
Thank you. It's being taped. It's being taped. Thank you. Okay, does anyone know how to edit these things, by the way, just in case? Okay, great. Okay, so this is so gratifying for so many reasons. First of all, it's the first class, although I know there was a JMI program with, I forgot, I'm blanking on his name. Who was it?
Financial guy.
Ruined it with
The financial guy.
Bel Air Capital.
Oh, okay.
No, Todd Milton. Todd Milton?
No, Todd Morgan. Todd Morgan. Okay. So we already had an event.
I hope he sees this video.
But this is.
Can we start now?
Yeah. Well, you know what? You know what? Anyone who sees this is really for the JMI guys, so they're just going to enjoy the repartee anyhow. So I'm going to make sure this doesn't get into anyone else's hands for sure. But so we already had that. But this is the first class since the last trip, and the topic. I mean, everyone who's been on the trip knows that when you come back from an experience like this, or even while you're there, what you're thinking about is, what am I going to do with this? How am I going to take this back? How am I going to keep this in my life? How am I going to continue this wave? You ride a wave in Israel. That's what it is, and you're cresting in Israel. Now, how am I going to continue this? How am I going to bring it home? What's it going to look like? I'm going to jump right back into the saddle. I'm pretty sure everyone did, right? The minute we got home.
Thank Daniel first for having us.
Thank you. Chef,
Shlomo's wife's here.
protocol. Yeah, well, I was going to do that at the end. But I would like to thank the Chayfitzes, is that the correct pronunciation? The Chayfitzes for opening up their home. This is the second time. Last time, gentlemen, be very happy. Last time the class was outside, but we moved it inside, so it's a lot more intimate and warm. So anyhow, so the first class, and we have a cross section. I think pretty much every year from 2014, 2015, 16, 17, we have a cross section of everybody, which is wonderful. Of course, a greater representation from this past year, and that always is the case because it's the freshest. It's freshest. So it just occurred to me that the first class that I want to give is a class on inspiration, on how tools and perspectives for maintaining and plugging in to inspiration, taking it and accessing it, so that it's not an experience that we had that stays there, but it's something that we bring with us, and we have the technology. We have the technology to continue that on some level. And even though I think those that have been coming to classes over the years have heard parts of this, I'm always tweaking my classes, especially because thank God, people from all, gentlemen from all years come. So that's what tonight's class is about. And I want to start with a wordplay. And this I'm pretty sure I've shared before, but for those of you, this is terrible. For those of you who are at a JMI Torah class for the first time, especially in inspiration, this will be new for you. It's the only audience participation mandated audience participation of the evening. I'm going to try to pull you in to the class, but this I need you for, okay? Here it is. I'm going to give you a word, and you're going to shout back. You don't have to shout it back, right? The antithesis of the word, the opposite of that word, okay? Okay, so the word is internal. External. Good. Inhale. Exhale. Beautiful. Inspire.
Expire.
Bingo. Did you notice something fascinating that happens every time I do this? Everyone pauses, even though there's a pattern that builds. Sometimes I use more words to establish the pattern even more strongly. When I got to inspire, you paused. Not only you paused, no one said anything except this gentleman. Tell him what he's won.
New car!
Yeah, new car!
Rice brownie.
Brownie over there.
Inspire, expire. If you're not inspired, you're dead. If you're not inspired, you're not. Let me say it in a way that's a little bit more polite. You're not dead.
We got the whole thing recorded.
You're not fully alive. You're not fully alive if you're not inspired. That wordplay is perfect. That's what we're going to talk about. How to be fully alive. How to take an experience that we all had, that while we were in it, got into our kishkas. Does everyone know what kishkas are? Intestines, right? And now the question is, how do I bring it home? Remember, we were all at the Kotel. This year, by the way, was a little bit earlier. We got there like at 11:30. Previous years, it was, I know, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, but still it was great. And the first thing I said, this time I wasn't as close to the Kotel as I was in past years, where I would touch it and I would say, how do we bring this home? How do I bring this home? How do I bring what we just experienced home? That's the challenge. That's a challenge in life. In general, so here I have a question. I'm going to use a word very specifically. I'm going to use the word profound. Okay? And I want you to think of an experience in your life that you would use that word to describe.
What was the word again?
Profound.
Profound.
Because I can tell you one thing for sure, and tell me if you agree, right? You would not use that word to describe a steak.
Well, it depends.
You see, I knew. There's one in every crowd. There's one in every crowd. The two guys who come fully dressed from work.
With bald heads.
Well, yes. What can we do? Okay.
Those are their pajamas.
Okay. Profound. The word profound. Think of an experience that you had that you're comfortable using that word. I had a profound. So I want to share mine, and then I want to hear from you. Okay? I'm going to share with you, I grew up, little bio about me, I grew up observant. I may be the only Aish rabbi that grew up observant. Most Aish rabbis didn't, and they became observant. I grew up observant. That means I always had this on my head. That means I always kept Shabbos. That means I always went to Jewish schools. I lived in a bubble, but it was a modern bubble. I grew up sort of like modern Orthodox. So I'm living in Albany, New York. I'm from the East Coast. I'm living in Albany, New York.
No.
Which, yes, I grew up, thank God my father was in Jewish education, so I was sort of like in the Jewish education's version of an army brat. I moved around a lot, mostly on the East Coast, always in very, very wintry places. So my father had to work like 2 or 3 jobs in Jewish education just so that we could make ends meet. And it's late one night, and my father's coming home, and my mother, Allow Shalom, may her soul rest in peace, says, Shlomo, please go outside and shovel the driveway so that when my father gets home, he doesn't have to get out of his car and shovel the driveway, and he can just pull in. You guys don't even know about this. You don't know about shoveling anything. Well, maybe something. You know some shoveling.
Lawyer.
Yeah, okay.
I actually got.
I walked right into that. So I said, fine. And I walk outside, and it's literally a blizzard. How many people here have ever been in a blizzard? Blizzard. Okay. So I'm walking outside. I'm 14 years old. I've had Shabbos in my life, my whole life. I've had yarmulke in my life the whole life. I had Jewish education in my life my whole life. I walk outside, I'm shoveling the snow, and then I stop. I remember this vividly. I stop. And if you've ever been in a blizzard, it was absolute silence with a heavy snow. There was something palpable in that moment that moved me in a way that I had never been moved before. 14-year-olds, especially guys, maybe women are a little bit different. Do we have profound moments that often? I don't know, as teenagers. Sometimes that comes later on as you live life. I had a profound moment. I felt something that I had never felt before. Something deep and profound, and it was the quiet, and it was the white, and it was maybe what I was doing for somebody. It was profound. And it bothered me. Later on, why was that my first profound moment? Why had I never had a profound, it's okay, I'm used to, as long as there's no barking. I had never had a profound moment. My next profound moment was when I went to yeshiva, and we'll talk about that. Okay.
I got him cute.
My next profound moment, okay, That was my profound moment. I felt something that had a quality to it that I had never, ever experienced before. That moved me deeply. I couldn't even put it into words. Hey, Mark, how's it going? There's a chair right there. That wasn't you barking when you came in, right? No. Did everyone hear the coyotes as we approach the house? Wow, that was wild.
Cut on the cord.
Okay. So, anybody else want to just chime in, because we're going to talk about this.
You said something. I want to be clear. You had this profound moment at 14.
At 14.
Was it at that moment at 14 that you said to yourself, "Wow, I never had this before"?
No, it was later on.
Okay.
It was later on that I looked back and I said, "Wow, isn't that kind of strange? I grew up with all this, and my first profound moment was out in a blizzard." Oh, you might not find it strange, but okay, we're going to come back to that. Anyone else want to share something
There was
that?
this one time in Spain, I took a whole bunch of ecstasy. No.
Yes.
If I may.
Yes.
So, I mean, a profound moment is something that you will always remember vividly. You know, your memory sometimes clouds some of your memories. I had a profound moment when my brother, who was had cancer, was in the hospital, and for a moment, I needed to just get out of the room and kind of like let whatever happened happen.
Oh,
I walked outside and I was sitting on a bench, and it was kind of cloudy. And all of a sudden, the cloud kind of moved, and the sun shone down on me with the heat of a fire. And I knew at that moment that he had passed. And it wasn't 20 seconds later that a friend of his that was in the room came running out the door and said, "Hershey, you gotta come." And I went upstairs. And,
you felt there was this synchronicity between.
It was a sign. And
Yeah.
it was just a moment that was just overpowering.
Okay.
And I think of it often.
Wow. You go back to it,
Yeah.
Jeff.
I had a very profound moment under my chuppah, where we were in a hotel right on Sunset up on the hill. It used to be called the Bellage.
Oh, yeah.
And the winds were whipping 40, 50 miles an hour. We're on the roof, fourth level roof, and the chuppah was coming down, and my poor people in my wedding, four of the guys away were holding up the chuppah because
It would blow away.
Down. And I get the chills when I think about this, but it was cold and it was whipping wind, and I think I've told you this, but I had this intense warm feeling wrap around me at this moment, and it was very clear to me that was my grandmother who had met Kelly, who had passed away while we were dating, giving me her blessing. I looked at Kelly, and I said, "My grandmother's here."
Wow. Yes. One more.
Yeah, I'm Greg. So my mom passed away in August of 2016 when my wife and I left a party to visit my mom, who was in intensive care at Tarzana Hospital. She passed away that next morning, and I saw her. She was in a ventilator state. When I went home, looking at ICU at Tarzana, there was my mom, who I love dearly. And then I went home. I went to sleep. 2 o'clock. I dreamt between 2 and 5 that I saw my mother when I walked in, and I saw her, and it was like it was a paranormal experience, but it was something very, very soothing. I saw from her body, and I don't believe in this stuff, but now I sort of do. I saw her as a little child, as a 10-year-old, come out of her body, and I remember what she looked like. Come out, look at me, and then if anybody who's been to Tarzana ICU, look at me and just turn and then walk out the door. And it was very, very profound. It was,
Wow.
But it was some way kind of satisfying.
This is so interesting because there is what?
All this death.
I know.
My profound moment is my son's bris.
Oh, so it's funny, you anticipated what I was going to say. It's so funny because all three of these have one thing in common. They are somewhat paranormal in nature.
I'm with you.
Right, and so we're going to come back to what you just shared. But we'll all agree, and by the way, this is the first time that this has happened, because most people go to what you just mentioned and other examples of it as a profound moment. But whatever it is, when we use that term, when we have that experience, it is an experience that is palpably, would you agree, palpably different. There's something, it moves you, it triggers something in you. You can't even, it's almost impossible to describe what you're feeling. Have you noticed that the more intense you feel something, less you're able to use words? You want to hear something fascinating, just as an aside, I do that a lot. The Hebrew word for word, the Hebrew word for word is milah. Milah. Milah is also the word for a bris. For a bris. What's up? Why a covenant? Well, it can be a covenant, a bris milah, but the bris, the actual bris that we're talking about, is called a bris milah. It can be a covenant. It can be. It's a word, and it's referring to that particular covenant, the male covenant. What's the connection? So on some level, we're cut off. Our ability to convey and capture what we're feeling is almost like cut off. We have limitations. We're almost not capable, unless you're a poet, and how many of us are capable really to convey the depth of any profound moment. So when you have a profound moment, you know it, you feel it, you can maybe describe it, but it's never almost fully satisfying. You never feel like you get it. Okay, so having said that, I want to share with you three perspectives and slash with each perspective a tool for that perspective, so that we can sort of like take the inspiration that started, right, and go with it, and have it and invite it into our lives, plug into it, and for it to always be accessible. That's what we all want. So let me start with this. And this I'm pretty sure I've shared in previous classes. I came across a quote. Let me preface it by saying this. I go away to Passover programs. I'm the rabbi and featured speaker at Passover programs in different parts of the country. One year, a gentleman came over to me and said the following. He was brought by his in-laws. He was brought by his in-laws to the program. You know, these Passover programs, you have families coming together, and it's wonderful. You don't have to clean at home, and families all get together. He came over to me and said, Rabbi, let me ask you something. How does it feel knowing that you're polluting the minds of everyone here at the program? That was his intro. It got better. He came over to me, how do you feel, Rabbi, knowing that you're polluting the mind? So I was a little bit taken aback. So clearly this man was only there because his in-laws brought him. He's married, he has 2 children, a devout atheist, someone who I clearly later on learned. Atheism doesn't happen in a vacuum. Nothing happens in a vacuum. If you stop believing or refuse to believe in something, there's a reason. You have to discover what that reason is for each and every person. But there's a reason. No one just closes their mind to something unless they've had an experience. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
I'm asking you because my back's to you. I want to involve you.
I think devout atheists are just as devout Orthodox, just on a different extreme.
Okay. Well, there's more closed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it's definitive extreme.
So I decided then and there, and this will be offered later on in the year, to develop a curriculum to respond cogently to atheists from a Jewish perspective. So I YouTubed all of the fathers of militant atheism, all of them. Christopher Hitchens, Professor Dawkins, Sam Harris, Leonard Krauss, all of them. So I knew their arguments and I knew their bios. I knew where they were coming from. And most of them do really, really well in debates because they're debating Christian theologians who with rare exception, play the same card over and over and over again, and it doesn't work. But bottom line is I decided I was going to do that. In preparation for one of my classes, I came across the following quote. Here's the quote. Albert Einstein. If bees disappeared from the planet, in 4.5 years, all life would end. All organic life would end. If bees disappeared from the planet. Bees. Insects. That particular insect. So at first I thought, wow, that's fascinating. We have no clue how the planet is absolutely dependent on insects. We're clueless. But then I got really, really, really troubled. Deeply troubled. And I'll tell you why. And hopefully you'll agree with me. But now, before I share that with you, let me... And I offered this lecture at a Passover program. Then I found out that Albert Einstein never said it. He never said it. All scholars agree that Albert Einstein never said those words. However, I still continue not to share that quote, but to teach the point that comes out of it, because it's still absolutely true. Whether it's bees or it's earthworms, and just Google earthworms. What happens to the planet if you remove earthworms from the planet? Earthworms, slugs, the effect that it has on the planet. So this is what troubled me. I'm thinking to myself, you remove bees from the planet, okay, organic life continues, but it affects the planet. You remove earthworms from the planet. Terribly affects the planet in major ways. What? You remove shawarma from the planet. You can't. Don't even go there. So then, this is what I thought. There is one organism that's not true about. That if you remove this organism from the planet is doing well. Humans. You remove us. What?
Nobody depends on us to survive.
Okay, and yes.
Not by nobody. I mean,
Yes. They don't depend on us. Yeah, but that doesn't. No, but theologically, philosophically, you know how troubling that is? You remove an earthworm from the planet, it has disastrous ramifications. You remove us, the oceans are clean, the air is clean. This planet is a paradise if you remove us. Now, that is problematic for me. Because I'll tell you what the Torah tells us, I'll tell you what every theology tells us, and I think something that we all instinctively believe. We are the apex of the, not of the food chain, of the soul train. We're the apex of creation. We are the most elevated, enlightened, developed. And you remove us and the planet's doing better than an earthworm? So how do you square that? What is it, here's the question, that comes from this. What do we bring to the table, gentlemen? What do we bring to the table that is significant, that's of substance, that the planet desperately needs? What do we bring to the table? Because if you open up the New York Times, or the LA Times, or the Washington Post, you have to get to page 35, the second section, before you read a story that is uplifting. Especially today, is I just found out about, what's his name? Matt Lauer. You have to get really deep into a paper to find that out. What do we bring to the table? That's my question. What do we bring to the table? That if you remove us, the planet is not a paradise.
Well, acknowledge the connection to Hashem, right? I mean, because we're here.
And therefore?
So, well, I think we're here to bring heaven down to earth, right?
So what you're saying is we can bring something down to earth that the earth benefits from.
Yeah, but also elevate the earth.
By the earth, you mean humanity?
I mean, there's no soul, there's no consciousness really.
And okay.
But
Yes.
how does that affect anybody except another human being?
So that's what we're getting at. So you're saying, but that would affect that would drastically, I think we would all agree, that could affect other humanity, but not necessarily the planet. But it affects humanity. It does. That's what
The
your
whole
pot.
dimension that be gone from the earth, I guess.
But imagine we're not here. Imagine we're not here. There's the Serengeti, there's the giraffe, the zebra,
There's no concept of God without people.
Correct. There's no concept of God, and therefore.
If there were no people,
Okay, and therefore.
maybe there's no God.
So can I take issue with your whole
Premise?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, why do you care? I mean, is the Earth here for humans, or is the humans here for the Earth? You seem to be saying that the humans are here for the Earth, like we're giving something to the Earth. That's so antithetical to Judaism. Judaism is the Earth is for humans. It's not that humans are here for the Earth. So if the humans are not here, I don't
That's a good
understand.
point, because atheists would say the other way around.
So I don't understand why do we care what we're contributing to the planet as much as what the planet contributes to us as humans?
Ask not what you
Oh.
can do for the
What?
earth.
Without us.
What?
The planet would survive,
The planet would survive without us.
but there would be no.
I still want
thought.
to. Okay, there won't be conscious thought. There wouldn't be godliness. There wouldn't be any of that. But what you're saying. Okay, so I want to respond to what you're saying. So you're troubled by this premise,
Yes.
right? That we're here for the earth.
Correct.
If you remove that, by definition, if we're here, would you agree to the statement that we are therefore, by definition, we're here for a purpose?
Absolutely.
We would-
My personal belief.
Your personal
Not
belief
people may
that our
disagree.
very reality, right, bespeaks purpose.
100%.
100%. So if we're here, what? If we're here, we're here for a
Atheists would disagree, but I
So,
agree.
okay, no, I'm saying, but
Right.
right. So that means we were placed here for a reason.
Okay.
That means we were placed here for a reason. It's not that the earth may contribute, may participate in that purpose, but we were placed here for a purpose. Does that make sense?
So now I see where you're going. So what's the purpose?
Correct.
That's really what you're getting
Yes,
at.
yes. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
So I want.
Atheists wouldn't buy that premise.
No, they wouldn't. I'm not speaking to atheists right now. That's a different class. I'm not speaking to.
Started with the atheists.
No, I just threw it out there because it was through. I did start with atheists, but I wanted to. It was. So why are we here?
That's really what you're asking.
Why are we here?
Why are we here?
Well, not only why are we here, Arya Markman's in the house. Why are we here? And then more than that, what do we bring to the table? So I want. There are multiple answers to this, and there's an overlap. There's an overlap to all the answers. I want to share one with you. The one thing that touches on what we just talked about, what we bring to the table. We're using words like consciousness, godliness, right? What we bring to the table is the capacity to evolve beyond our impulses. We have the capacity to aspire. Aspire. I'm not talking about inspiration right now. We have the capacity to aspire. A lion doesn't aspire for anything.
Yeah, but atheists
There's-
would say that we also are the only ones that can
That can
that
destroy the
that
planet.
can create fiction.
Right.
Lions don't know fiction; they know food.
Right.
They know water.
Right.
They don't know fiction.
And therefore, I said that there were
belief systems.
right, and humans do have a belief system.
Correct.
Right. Okay, so that would be another difference between us and animals, but why is that significant?
We have a godly conscience and they don't.
What?
We have a godly conscience.
We have a godly conscience, and that godly consciousness allows us not to stay dormant in our lives. In other words, we have the capacity not to accept our genes, not to accept our impulses, not to just accept our circumstances, but to aspire for something more. You'll never see the following. You'll never see on the Serengeti, you'll see a cheetah chasing down a zebra, stopping in the middle and saying, you know what, this just doesn't feel right.
How does that aspiration benefit anybody?
Difference of animals.
Oh, no, the capacity to aspire to go beyond
Your
premise.
premise started with earthworms benefit the earth, bees benefit, all these other creatures around us benefit
The
each
earth.
other and the earth.
Right.
And you're basically proving the point that we benefit none of these other functions.
No, we just take.
Not the earth, not the animals.
No, but if we aspire, if we have a godly aspiration, if having a soul means the following, that we have a capacity.
You're saying you started with this physical piece that about the earth.
Right.
It's all
No.
physical. It's all not mental, not soul, not
You
anything.
basically said all these things
So-
have a purpose to
So
the
does
world.
an enlightened soul benefit the planet? Does an enlightened soul benefit the planet?
Yes,
Because we know how an unenlightened soul,
we do exploit the planet.
We're the only creatures
Right,
that
but
do.
that's the animal.
No, it doesn't like soul.
Right.
We're supposed to aspire beyond that.
Our bodies and our animal souls exploit the planet.
Right.
The battle
The most-
and the
most
aspiration is to have your godly soul attain a higher level. and
Right.
attach
So you're not
itself to
exploiting the
Hashem.
planet. Right.
So you're not
So
exploiting
the
the
part
planet.
of us
you're
that
adding
exploits
to
the
it.
earth is shit.
The part of us that exploits is not. You want to hear something fascinating? Do you want to hear something fascinating? And again, there's an interesting scientific piece to this that I'm not going to show right now, but it plays off of what we're saying. Do you know that originally, according to the oral tradition, when man was created, man appears on the planet, right? Man appears last. Everything else was created. Man appears last. Animals were not carnivorous. Man was not carnivorous. All humanity and all animal forms were herbivores. That changed.
How do you know?
That changed. Well, where do you see it in the oral? No, Ralph. No, it's in the oral tradition. You mean where do we deduce that from? I don't know. I don't think it's deduced from psukim. I don't think it's deduced from an explicit pasuk, but explicit verse. But I'll look into that for you. But it's brought down that initially every living thing was an herbivore. That changed when man changed. That changed when man fell. That's what the rabbi said. When man fell, that introduced into the planet. When man, who has the potential to live an elevated, enlightened life, doesn't, that introduced an animalistic impulse into the world. It implanted it into the world.
And therefore he went out and killed
Well, and that's what's...
living things.
And then animals as well. It affected and infected, yes.
So if we're all herbivores, there's no animal sacrifices until man falls, why then is sacrificing an animal such a godly act to the ancient Israelites and to the Hebrews? And why did that become such a...
I opened myself up to that one, but what do you mean? No, but he's asking a good question.
The animals are
Because
it's more pure than we are.
So who can come up with an answer? That sounds, Peter would have a field day. A field day in the old city.
Pamela Anderson wanted me to bring that up.
the animal is helping us reach God because it's already pure.
Yeah, but people. Well, no, that's interesting.
killing it and eating
No,
it
that's interesting. But a lot of people would have a lot of people would have problems with using an animal in order for us, to. But the answer that I'm going to share is quite similar to yours. What?
We've also evolved out of that.
Well, that's not so clear what's going to be when the third temple is
And the
rebuilt.
animals evolved
Because it
also
seems like
to
we wanna
the
bring that
process
back
from
once the
herbivores to where they're
temple
eating
goes
over
back.
time. I mean, it wasn't that the man dropped and all of a sudden it changed. Before man was here, there was
Animals eating animals.
eating animals. I mean,
I think the answer.
No. According to the rabbis, that's not true. According to the rabbis, it's not true. They literally were not. They were, because the verse originally says. By the way, Jeff, the verses say that they were herbivores. It's an explicit verse in Bereshis in the beginning. So the point is this. The point is this. That we have a capacity that an enlightened human being changes the planet. When a person, when you have a capacity to override your impulses, do we have that capacity? Yes. Do we always employ it? No. But we have the capacity to override our impulses.
But that assumes that all impulses are negative, right, in nature. I think that
Oh no, I don't mean to imply that. But there are impulses that you would say,
Your
yeah.
animalistic soul is natural. You're natural, but we have the ability to think with our godly soul or our godly, and we can think of doing things in a better way. Where an animal can only do it by instinct. We actually can.
We have the capacity to think it out. Go ahead.
Free will.
Well, no, that's part of this conversation. Absolutely, we have the ability to arrive over impulses is free will, for sure.
we've gone down a big rabbit hole. Let's go back to how we...
Yeah.
Right, we did go down. But that happens when you open it up, which I like to do. Okay, so we have the capacity to live enlightened, elevated lives, to rise above our impulses, or better said, to direct our impulses, not to eliminate our impulses. By the way, that's not our religion. We don't believe in eliminating anything. There's no such, celibacy would be a crime against humanity. It would be one of the greatest crimes not to bring children into the world, or to have that as, we don't believe in that, right? We believe in taking our impulses and elevating them. So we have the capacity for aspiration. We have the capacity for aspiration. We have the capacity to expand our consciousness, right? That capacity comes. Where does that come? What's an outlet for that? So in the Jewish perspective, the outlet for that is study, Jewish study. To expand. How do we expand? Let me ask you something. What's the curriculum for that? Rabbi, that's great. How do I do that? How do I work on my impulses? How do I work on my impulses? How do I sit on your hands? So the capacity to expand your horizons, to learn, to study, to think of new ways, to think innovatively and creatively. That's how you do it. That's why Jewish study is such a core belief, because it allows you not to be dormant with your ideas, but to expand them. To invite godliness in, and not just to be satisfied, to be in a state. You know, it's interesting. The water is used as a metaphor for Torah. So most people think, why? Give me the easy reason. Give me the easy reason why water might be used as a metaphor for Torah. What? Source of life. Third,
critical for the physical world.
It's absolutely critical, quenches your thirst, all that stuff. There's another reason why water is considered the metaphor, is a metaphor for Torah.
You can't fully
What happens, what?
You can't ever fully grasp it.
Oh, well, that's interesting. That's very cool. I like that idea. I'm going to use it.
Edit that part. Well done.
I'm going to quote you. I always do that. The other idea is this: what happens when water is absolutely stationary?
It goes away.
No, not frozen. It's stagnant. It becomes a water that has no current, becomes stagnant, becomes a cesspool. I once had a listing in Hancock Park. It was a big house in Hancock Park, and they weren't living there anymore. They moved out of the house, but it was a beautiful house with a beautiful pool, and they stopped the pool man, and they stopped putting in chlorine. And then the city got in touch with me because it became a cesspool and a swamp for mosquitoes in the middle of Hancock Park, this huge estate. When there is no current in water, it stagnates. When there is no, we stagnate. Water is considered the metaphor for Torah because that's what Torah is supposed to help us prevent, not to be stagnant, to constantly work and like we did when we were in the yeshiva, and ask questions and struggle and not to be satisfied and expand your consciousness. Because when you do that, you're fully alive, and you're not stagnant. Does that make sense?
Doesn't the word Israel mean to struggle?
Oh,
Struggle with God.
yes, it does. It does. It's so interesting. The word, it's part of another class, but I'm going to go there right now. The word Israel literally means not only to struggle with God, but to struggle. Jacob became Israel. His name was given to him because he struggled with man and with God, and he prevailed. Well, Abraham, now you're showing off.
Actually, just one little side. Do you know what Islam means?
Submission
to God.
To God.
So
Not the opposite of
the opposite.
it. The opposite.
It's an
the
interesting
opposite.
twist.
Right.
Not that one is wrong, or I think ours is better, but it's just an interesting.
Well, no. Without making a value judgment on any other religion. But wouldn't you say, isn't that even a little bit surprising, theologically, that there's a religion that actually we got the name that is a defining character of the Jewish people, is the fact that we struggle with God. We don't blindly go. We literally struggle with God. And throughout the Torah, you find that. Abraham was struggled with God. He wasn't happy with the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. He's trying to negotiate with God. What are you doing? What chutzpah do you have? You're trying to negotiate with God? He doesn't know what he's doing? What?
is ready to sacrifice his son with no question.
Well, that's a question that's always asked.
But that is the faith. You said that there is a level of faith to Judaism. It's not.
Oh, right. There is a level of
The
faith.
struggle's real, but there's a.
But
large aspect
of course.
faith.
But faith is real when there's also struggle. Faith is real when there's also struggle. If you're not struggling and then you know what you are? Then you're just a robot. God doesn't want us to be Nike Jews. He doesn't want us to just do it. What?
You're an animal, not a robot.
Well, okay, yes. Yeah, you're pure. You're right. You just, but it's a religious instinct, right? So, okay, so that's point number one. Point number one is you want to live an inspired life. You want to feel something profound in your life. You have to push yourself. You have to expand your consciousness. How do you do that? How do you push yourself? You study, you learn, you expand your mind. Obviously, I believe very strongly that the Torah is the primary vehicle for that. Not the only vehicle for that, but the primary vehicle for that. You want to hear something fascinating? What letter of the alphabet does the Torah begin with? Beit. Bereshit. In the beginning, God created the all matter, the cosmos, with a beit. What letter of the alphabet is that? It's the second letter of the alphabet. What do the Ten Commandments begin with? The Ten Commandments begins with an aleph, the first letter. What the Torah is ingeniously teaching is the following. You want to feel God in your life? There are two ways. There's actually a third way. I'm not doing that now. There are two ways. One is in nature. One is in a blizzard, shoveling snow for your father so he doesn't have to get out of the car. That's nature. Visceral, powerful, you experience it, it's profound, not primary. That's the secondary. You know what the first one is? Study, learn, expand yourself. That's the primary way to feel something profound. Does that make sense? Nature is powerful. Life is full of powerful environments and moments. The question is which moments are the most powerful. So nature is, birth is, a lot of people say death, birth, people say I've heard people say bankruptcy. My bankruptcy taught me so much and was a huge profound moment for me. It started him down a whole different course. Yes.
I just wanted to jump back to something that you said at the beginning, which struck me. So you were pointing out as people were telling their stories of these profound experiences that often they struggle for the words.
Yes.
And what I realized, though, that we also believe that Hashem created the world
with
by
words,
speaking it with words.
Right.
So perhaps those moments where we feel so profound is as close to God as we can get. And so we can't speak the words because they are so godly. They are so above and beyond us that's because I had a similar experience to what Jeff was saying. When I was in high school, I was driving home. I was tired. I wasn't drunk, but my car started swerving off the road, and I was heading straight for a tree. And literally, my two grandfathers were next to me in the car, grabbed the steering wheel, and swerved the car out. And I woke up right before I was going to hit the tree and slammed on the brakes and steered away and was fine. And I can describe that moment, but then there are other words that are so, they don't come to me because that was probably as close to a godly experience as I've ever had. Same
well, that's again akin to all these other ones. Those are like really paranormal experiences that you feel.
Can we go back to learn for a second?
Yeah, to learning, because there are three. Learning is the first. I'm going to do the other two more quickly because we went off on a lot of tangents.
I think if we're talking about learning, it's a very broad spectrum. It's learning to become a doctor, a lawyer, a bricklayer.
Right.
It's learning about who you are. It's learning about your spouse, your children. So it's very broad. I mentioned this to you once before. I don't know, most of you, many of you probably have seen the movie where it starts with a D. There are these four guys, Jewish guys, lived out
Defiance,
where they were hicks from the sticks. These were guys who were farmers, And during World War II, these guys had guns. They knew how to build things. I mean, to them, they weren't city folk. And they did this thing where they had thousands of people in the forest who they kept alive, and they built a community. And some of these were professors, they were musicians. These guys were probably the most down to earth guys. Nevertheless, in that movie, there's a point in which, if you've seen it, where they have to go rob some food so they can eat, and they have to go steal from somebody's house. And it's a difficult one, whatever that means. And they're talking about how difficult it is, and one of the younger kids says, I can do that. I studied the Torah. Okay, it took me a moment, and the writer conceptually was kind of talking about what you're talking about, and that is, if you spend the time learning, it teaches you things beyond what it is that you're learning. It makes your mind work. It makes you figure out how to get things done. And if that's what you're talking about, that's a very broad subject. It's not just learning the course.
Right. There's a lot of ancillary stuff. I'm not talking really about that because, of course, there are practical benefits. I remember I was studying for law school a long time ago. Decided not to go in a different direction. I was studying for the LSATs, and somebody told me that the Ivy League schools, if they see that you've studied Talmud, right, they take it very, very seriously. Law schools, because your mind, they believe, is trained if you study that. But I'm not talking about that. That's intellectual. I'm talking about a type of learning that expands your consciousness, where you're looking at you're not learning a craft, you're not learning a profession, you're learning deep stuff about yourself, about purpose and more elevated consciousness.
Well, I think also, though, when we talk about profound moments, right? Those are the moments where the rest of the world seems to fall away.
Oh, that's interesting.
Where you are...
Where you're just singularly...
So, and there's a lot of things that do that, right? Musicality. Like, I don't know that I've ever been in the Israel trip for me. There was profound moment after profound moment after profound moment, right? Whether it was the Kotel, whether it was Shabbos on the Kotel, whether it was the Israeli fighter jets flying over the the bar mitzvah on Masada. I mean, there was an elevated consciousness. Like, there was something special there. But I think that in those moments, right, and what you're talking about when study allows you in thought, right, to allow the world to drop away, right, so that
you're entering like another zone.
I mean, if you I think if you can ponder something enough to get to a place where you actually are being thoughtful. You're not just learning for regurgitation, but you're learning for personal growth and development.
It's about being thoughtful.
Right.
Working through it. And I'm trying for you to give us where you're coming from. And so you're saying it's not about learning a skill, not about learning something.
It's not.
About being thoughtful.
There's not right. There's about it's just like profound, and profound is something that is almost hard, almost impossible to verbally capture and convey. Learning that isn't necessarily focused or motivated by the pursuit of a particular thing, but it's for consciousness only. It's for the study. Although the study of Torah also has practical aspects to it, but it's the study of deep, not only intellectual but spiritual type of concepts that expands your consciousness.
But isn't the study of Torah also because it deepens the relationship you have with God?
For sure.
Right. So the more observant you are, the more you study, the deeper your understanding for God's intent.
Well, it becomes a God experience. The learning becomes a God experience. It almost nourishes what I would say.
Whether it's supernatural or I said this before, whether it's supernatural or superhuman, whether we put into it intention,
right,
and in that intention comes power, right, or whether it's divine and it comes the other way around.
Well, that touches on another thing. If you have no intention, can something still come? Even if that's not your intention, but you do something that is enlightened by definition, will you be enlightened by that thing, even though that wasn't your intention? That could be. Listen, I want to be sensitive to people's time. So the first thing, and I apologize for all the tangents, but that's what happens, and I indulge them, and maybe I shouldn't or should. You decide. Is there are 3 L's. The first one is learning. Having a soul, an inquisitive soul, where you're not satisfied with your life. Just no matter how successful you are professionally, no matter how successful you are artistically, no matter how successful you are, fill in the blank, but where you're involved in an endeavor, a learning endeavor that literally is soul oriented. Yes. No, that was Arye. Arye wants to know when I'm done. That's it. No. God, I'm only joking. Okay, so there are 3 L's. The first one is living. The first one is learning. The second one is loving. The second one is loving. There are 3 of them. There's learning, loving, living. Those are the 3 L's that will bring will introduce profound or help you access the profound. This is what I mean. What do you think I mean by loving? When I say loving, children, wife. Those are the easy ones. By loving, I mean much more broadly. But go easy first. But the truth of the matter is, they teach us to love.
Right.
They teach us to love. Loving means caring, literally expending energy on behalf of another person. Do you know what's fascinating? Tell me if you agree with this statement. Because it actually comes from a Torah teaching from the beginning of the Torah. Do you agree that parents love their children more than the children love the parents? Is that a factual? Is that factual? Forget about teens, where that's clear. Forget about teens. Would you see that that's a factual statement? Tell me, kids utterly dependent on us, maybe that's part of the problem, at least initially. Tell me why that is factually correct.
Because the parents give more to the children than the children.
Plain and simple. Because the parents give unconditionally to the children. They are creatures of giving. It establishes a bond that is literally unbreakable for the most part. Even when there are problems, what parent wouldn't gladly welcome back a child that had become estranged from that parent? The giving itself creates a bond that is irrevocable. It can't be. So we see that. Now what's fascinating is, you know what the Hebrew word for loving is? Ahava. Do you know what the root of that word is? Well, no, ahav means love. The root of that word is hav. A lot of people don't know this. Do you know what hav means? To give. The root of loving. Now what this, because I always say this, I always share this with you. If you want to understand any reality in life, I'm telling you, I've done it, I can share dozens of these with you. Go to the Hebrew word, reduce it to its shoresh, to its root, and you will understand that thing on an absolute essential level. So love is giving. So what you might be tempted to say is the following. Okay, you give to those you love. That seems easy. It's the opposite. You love those who you give to. You want to create love? You want to love your partner more? You want to love your kids more? Well, loving kids, that comes naturally. Partner's a little bit more challenging. You want to love anybody more? You want to love someone who has hurt you? You want to get past that? Give to that person.
Wow. How about loving yourself?
Give to yourself. Yeah. Absolutely. And thank you for adding that. You want to love, you give. Give is a life-energizing experience. It is profound. The second way to feel, yeah.
But I think we have to be clear. This isn't about giving someone a coat, a hat, a purse, or shoes. This is about giving of yourself.
I'm about to get there. Yes, going out of your way for that. So let me share something with you. What time is it, by the way? I want to be sensitive. What time?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. We start at 8. Okay, 10 minutes. Are we okay? 10 minutes. What if somebody asks you to distill all of Judaism down to one phrase or verse? Impossible, right? A rabbi did it. Tell me which one.
Hello.
What was the phrase?
Do unto others as you'd have done to yourself.
Do unto others the golden rule.
I'm sure I screwed it up.
Right, okay. which is connected to this phrase that we all know, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah, that's it.
Right? Thank you. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Impossible, right? Impossible. There's another way to translate that phrase. Everyone knows that phrase. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Do you know it? Are you familiar with it? Mm-hmm. The other way to enunciate that phrase is as follows. Love your neighbor as you love yourself, said that way, is a command, a mandate to love somebody as much as you love yourself. Another way of saying it that speaks to this is you will love yourself. Kamocha, you love yourself when you love another. You love another, you want to love yourself? You want to feel good about yourself? Care about another person. You want to love it, you want to love yourself, and who doesn't? Who isn't challenged by loving themselves? Who isn't challenged on the planet by loving themselves? Love another person, give to another person, you will love yourself. It's an inversion of that pasuk. It flows from the words. Yes.
Israel is the only place I've ever been where the predisposition is to give to others. You see a beggar, right?
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
in Sfat.
Yeah.
And I think you illuminated the fact to us that this woman has X number of children and her husband left her or she's divorced or whatever.
Yes.
If you have it in your heart to give to her.
Right.
And that's so different and opposed to the way I live my life here, which is I see someone asking and I'm instantly I instantly question what they do and I never give. And Israel's the only place that I've.
Wow. So that opened it up. That opened that up for you in Israel.
It is a fact in Israel that
Right.
you don't quite. I mean, you if you have, you give.
Right.
Why just in Israel?
I'm saying.
No, somehow in Israel, that experience opened up, tapped into that reservoir, which we all have.
No, I'm saying I think it's that's the Israeli way. That seems to be the Israeli way.
I've got one like that.
I think that's the Jewish way. I think that
Well,
I think we're probably a little bit jaded here because there's so much of it. It's an affront, and in the media, there's all these pictures painted. But I a long time ago decided never to refuse a generous inclination.
Yeah.
Wherever it is.
Yeah.
Right,
And you're saying it's a very Jewish. Right.
But there was a guy walking down the street today, grabbing something out of the garbage can. I gave him $20.
But if he asked
Get
you
a
for
hot
the money,
breakfast.
if that same person asked me for the money, I wouldn't give it. I'll give if I want to, but if someone asks me, I don't give.
And you're saying that was different in Israel.
I found that to be absolutely.
You hate salesmen,
First of all,
though.
Danny's right about that.
But Dan,
I think it's
for
a
Dan.
deeper meaning. Is that subconsciously, you're in Israel, you're subconsciously helping another Jew. Here, there's a different J to it.
Yeah. You think that's true?
I just have one that you'll remember. We were, I think it was 2 years ago, and I'll never forget this feeling. We were stuck in some traffic because there was a car accident.
Oh, yeah.
And usually when that happens here, we're pissed off, like, we're wasting our time. This idiot got in an accident. We were there, there was a car accident. I was thinking, God, I hope they're okay.
Yeah.
It's a very different mindset when you're in Israel.
Listen, the truth of the matter is.
By the way, Scott, I think your point is a very valid point. I think there is amongst us a clannish relationship that says, you know what, I'm going to give in this place. In addition to whatever else I may give, I have literally a stack of envelopes on my desk that my wife's going to write, or my grandson to write out the checks. There's maybe 2 that don't have something to do with either Israel or Judaism.
Yeah. Well, that's because it doesn't. But it doesn't mean that it's to your point. I don't ever, me personally, I don't want to ever get to the place where I'm only pained by the suffering of Jews, or I'm only moved to give to Jews. I don't want to get there. And thank God, as a people, throughout history, we have a pretty good record of being philanthropic in every society that we've lived in. until, of course,
Commanded to bring
they
lightning
threatened to kill us. And
Yeah, right.
yeah, we know. Okay, I'm going
pay a buck.
to share this last story with you, and I'm not even going to get to the last part because I really. But here's the story. How many of you have ever been to a military funeral? You've been to a military funeral? You have?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's a very profound experience. I've been to two the same year, fathers of friends of mine, good friends of mine. And I'll tell you what happened at the first one. I'd never been, and you know me a little bit, all of you know me, I have a tendency of getting emotional. A little bit. You brought it out in me.
Jason's fault.
So I happened to park right in front of the hearse because I got there before the hearse got there. Right behind the hearse. I didn't know the hearse was going to be there. I never would have parked there. So what happened was, after the funeral, and it was a flag-draped coffin.
They bumped your car with the coffin.
And I got so angry.
What are you doing? What's wrong with you people?
So I ended up getting up there. Flag draped, very emotional. They were talking about him in his service. I ended up getting there to the burial place before anyone else. So I got there, I got out of my car. No, I was in front of the hearse. I got out of my car, the hearse hadn't arrived yet. And I'm there, and before the hearse arrived, standing by the grave were two soldiers, right, in their uniforms, saluting. The hearse had not even arrived yet. And I'm thinking and tears started to well up in my eyes just seeing these two soldiers. Then the hearse arrives, right? And they pull the casket out of the hearse, flag-draped coffin. They take the coffin, right? And the men don't stop. They just stay there frozen. They take the coffin. They take the flag off of the coffin. It's this huge flag. And there's this whole folding ceremony where they're at two ends, maybe 20, 30 feet apart. And they're folding it and walking towards each other. And everyone is silent. And that is incredibly powerful. And I started welling up again. And then they present the flag to the wife or to the children. In this case, it was my friend, right? And that was the end of it. So whenever I get emotional, I always think back and I think, okay, what was it about this particular event that triggered emotion in me? Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't. So at the time, I didn't get it. But then later on, I did. I think I know exactly why I got emotional when I saw this. Because I think that each and every one of us desperately wants to feel that they're living an honorable life, that they're of service, and that their lives are heroic. All of us want to feel that instinctively. And I was in the presence of somebody who gave of himself, even though he survived, who sacrificed, who his love of his country, his love of his family, his love, right, allowed him or engendered with him the courage to sacrifice his life. And we all want that in our lives. We all want to live honorable lives. We want to look at our lives and feel like I extended myself for others. I was of service to others. That's what we want instinctively. So that happens when you give to the world, when you give to another person, and giving takes many, many, many forms. Giving can be Ralph taking you out to lunch, which he loves to do, by the way. Wealth can be giving a loan. Wealth can be giving can take many, many forms. But if you want to love yourself, I'm turning that phrase. You want to love yourself, love others. Give to others. You will honor yourself. You will feel that you're living an honorable life. And extend yourself and be of service to others. Being of service is huge. It's huge in the addiction world. That's how they treat them, is by giving them that, or reinstilling within that belief that they can be of service here. That's what leads so many people astray. So, to sum up, learn, love, live. The live part is in every part, and this I'm doing very quickly, in every part of your life, be elevated. Whether you're managing a portfolio, whether you're speaking to a waitress, whether you're speaking to your wife, whether you're conducting war, whether you're speaking to your whoever, do it in an elevated way. And not only will you be inspired, you will be a source of inspiration to others. That's what we have the capacity for. Alavai. Okay. Yes. Oh, 1 second. Before you go there, I made a big, I'm sorry. I made a big mistake. I'm doing this retroactively. I dedicate this class. We have a JMI brother who was on my first trip 4 years ago, Rob Miles, whose daughter is struggling with a health issue again. And I dedicate this class to her. May any enlightenment that came via this class, may it envelop her and heal her quickly. Amen.
Guys, let me,
Can you?
we can turn it off.
We don't want to record this.